All right, hey Vikings fans, welcome in to another episode of the Skol. I'm Evan.
And I'm Austin.
We're just a couple of dudes from Iowa. We like drinking beer, talking about the Vikings.
Yeah, we do. And tonight we had a really good beer from Millstream Brewing Company out of Amana, Iowa. We had their Shenanigans Irish Red Ale in honor of upcoming St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, super good beer. I'm excited to talk about that here pretty soon. But we also had a lot to talk about in the earliest days of the NFL free agency window. Holy buckets.
Yeah, the Vikings went off. So we talked a lot about the free agency exits and additions that the Vikings had this year. This is going to be a fun year. Yeah,
we got even more specific with that too and talked about moves that we're most and least excited about. So I think there were more like, yeah, we're super excited about this than not really than anything else. So
lots of exciting things for Vikings to be looking forward to. But until then, grab a cold one. Join us.
Skol.
Skol.
All right, we're going to give a quick shout out to show sponsor, Big Top Ventures. If you're looking to take an all-inclusive trip to Mexico or Jamaica, we're going to flash their email right down here, bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Send them an email, let them know when you're looking to take a trip, and they'll hook you up with the best rates possible for that all-inclusive trip to Mexico or Jamaica. So shout out Big Top Ventures. Thanks so much for sponsoring today's episode.
Yeah, and listeners and watchers, you won't know. That was, the fourth time we tried to do that ad read? Not to throw you under the bus.
Could have been.
But yeah, I definitely hit up Big Top Ventures. I'm going in like 60-ish days, and then again like 60-ish days after that. So I'm super pumped. Obviously something I love to do. Evan, you need to get on the all-inclusive train. So yeah, Big Top Ventures, they're great people to work with, really easy. And the trips are a lot of fun.
Somebody's going to go rob your house while you're gone, just so you know, because you're like...
They don't know when we're recording this or when I'm going to be gone. So
there you go. Well, you keep bringing it up, and I'm just jealous.
Yeah, it's really just more to rub it in.
Yeah. So
I thought you were going to book something.
It's in the works. I made a hot take, and I said within the next year, calendar year, it'll happen. So as late as early 2026.
Okay.
I will go on a trip.
All right.
With Big Top Ventures. It's going to happen.
All right, you better. Another thing you better do is open up a beer with me tonight.
Yes.
So I don't know. Usually we do, when you bring the beer, you talk about it. So, but you already did the ad read. We kind of switch those up usually. I don't know. Do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to go off the cuff here?
Well, I mean, I don't have a ton to say about it other than I'm excited to try it. And right now it is, I think, 5 days before St. Patrick's Day. So I figured having a St. Patrick's Day themed Irish beer would be pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's what we've got. Tell
Awesome.
us about it.
So we've got Millstream Brewing Company out of Amana, Iowa. We are drinking their Shenanigans Irish Red Ale. I like Millstream because their packaging is usually pretty funny. They usually have some kind of tagline on there. I don't know what this means, but they have By mid ag ol. I might have just swore at you in some other language.
I wonder if that's just like Skol or like cheers in Irish.
Well, if you know what that means, let us know, listeners. Yeah, I'm excited for this. I don't know anything else about it other than it's an Irish red, and it kind of packs a punch a little bit.
7%er.
Yeah. So I'm excited. Thank goodness we only have two, because we both have to go to work tomorrow. So
yes, we do.
I think you were about to taste it. Did you just taste it?
No, I was smelling it.
Oh man. All right. So I had the perfect pour here.
That was a great pour. Mine was a little flat. But you can see the color if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. A nice red color.
Yeah.
Good head retention on Austin's pour. He's kind of mastered the art of that.
You know, you made fun of me for so long, and I still think you're kind of like meta making fun of me a little bit. Which is okay. That's fine. I'm confident in my beer pouring abilities, regardless of what other people think. This is what a beer should look like.
I don't disagree. I think we need to Skol it up, and we need to try this beer because I'm excited.
Skol.
Skol. I like that.
Ooh, that's good.
That's a good red, for sure.
Absolutely. And in a really good way, you can kind of taste that this isn't like a 3%er.
Yeah, there is a little bit of booziness to it.
I like it, though. I think it adds to the overall flavor.
It's not overpowering, but you also get the caramel maltiness of a red, which I like. So I'm a fan. It's kind of a no nonsense, pretty straightforward Irish red beer, but I think too I think the 7% is where they get the Shenanigans name. If you have a few too many of these, you might find yourself in some shenanigans on St. Patrick's Day. So
I feel like usually Millstream has some kind of not only tagline but like description. This one, no, just straight up Irish red. So I like it a lot. If you're into this kind of beer, you'd like it a lot too. Evan, this is in your territory of favorites. It's not my number one favorite territory, but I still really like this one a lot, and I will gladly drink the rest of this and the next one too.
You'll have your fair share for sure. Well, you know who's been up to some shenanigans this week?
Who?
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. That dude's been cooking, man.
Yeah, he has.
He has had a busy week. I don't think that guy's probably slept since last week. It's currently Wednesday, March 12th, if you're wondering. And there's a reason why we delayed releasing an episode this week, was because we didn't want to just sit there and talk about all the hypotheticals and then 2 days later have it all be irrelevant, because free agency is now in full swing. And it's a good thing we waited, because holy buckets. Kwesi's been a busy dude. I'm sure he's been on the phone nonstop. He's been orchestrating deals left and right. We have a huge long list of free agency departures from the Vikings, which we knew would happen because there was just a long list of free agents anyways. But I'm more excited to eventually talk about these free agency additions or extensions that they've offered to already Viking players. Yeah. So I think we first start with the departures and just talk about, like, I'm sure people out there, if you're listening, you know who's left at this point in time, and there's still plenty of time left for other players to leave. But maybe we can just kind of, talk about the players we're most disappointed in seeing leave and most excited to see gone. Kind of thing for departures.
I like that. So like you said, we're not breaking any news. If you're listening to this, you definitely were paying attention along with the Vikings news as free agency was breaking. So, but just to run down really quick, as of right now, again, we're recording Wednesday night, Wednesday evening, before, too late. Former Vikings, or Vikings that have signed with other teams: Nick Mullins, quarterback to the Jaguars; Sam Darnold, QB1 from 2024, signed a pretty awesome deal with the Seahawks. Cam Bynum, safety, went to Indianapolis. Johnny Munt, for all you Munt fans out there, I won't say what the actual nicknames are. He also went to Jacksonville. Tight end went to Jacksonville.
We're a family-friendly program.
Hey, it's a fun word. I would still consider myself one of those types of fans. If you know, you know. Patrick Jones, who I'm pretty sure, if we went back, I won't do it just because it would be a little annoying, but I'll own it. I'm pretty sure before the season, I had Patrick Jones, outside linebacker, as like a cut candidate. And he really came out, especially the first handful of games of the season for the Vikings, and I think he had a handful of sacks right away. He got something like a 2-year, $20 million deal with Carolina, which is
I think we disagreed on that because I think I said, no, I want him back.
Yeah.
I felt like he really started to come on at the end of the 22 season. And sure enough, yeah, he really kind of picked up where he left off at the beginning of this season.
Yeah, and again, I said he was a cut candidate before the 24 season here, and I'm happy to say I was wrong on that. Like, he showed me, and good for him.
23 season. End of 23 season was what I was saying.
Oh,
I
okay,
said 22.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm getting my years mixed up.
But yeah, he went to Carolina following DJ Wanham from a year ago, going from Minnesota to Carolina. Daniel Jones, quarterback. I'm a little surprised by this, but not terribly surprised. I think he got like something like a $14 million 1-year deal with Indy. I almost assumed he would come back as QB2 for the Vikings, but we've both also said, if he's got a better deal elsewhere, congrats, man. Thanks for coming in, and hopefully you learned what you needed to learn, and he worked himself a market. So hopefully he succeeds in Indy. He's going to have to battle Anthony Richardson, but...
Well, and if you think about his situation now in Indianapolis, he's kind of walking into not exactly the same, but a similar situation to what Sam Darnold walked into last season with J.J. McCarthy. Anthony Richardson is not a rookie, but he was a rookie that really struggled and now has to prove himself. And now they've brought in Daniel Jones, who has playoff experience as a starter and has won a playoff game, unfortunately. Which was against the Vikings. Right, but like, and to get $14 million, Sam Darnold only got 10 last year, and ended up starting every game, and the battle was already kind of set, I think, before preseason even started, and then it was finalized when JJ's knee decided to stop working. So,
and then for the last Viking to sign with another team, Trent Sherfield, wide receiver, special teams ace and wide receiver, signed with the Broncos, I think, for like a 2-year contract. So good for all those guys. I think we can kind of go into detail a little bit more on some of them, but I think there's no hard feelings, no ill will. Most Vikings fans would be okay. Congrats to those guys for getting contracts with other teams. Evan, on that list of departures, who are you most... I don't think we're mad about any of them, but who would you most have wanted the Vikings to sign? Who do you wish the Vikings had worked on a little bit more?
I think the answer is pretty easy. I think it's Camp Bynum.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's not the dance moves. It's not the, any of that. I think he was just a team culture guy. He was just totally bought in on everything that KOC has been trying to build since he got there. Everything centers on being positive and taking it one game at a time and just going out one play at a time. And I think he just embodied that. And he wasn't the greatest safety in the league, and he probably won't be a Harrison Smith level safety when his career is all said and done. But he's just a really darn good football player, and he was fun to watch, and that's what made him entertaining. So I think all of that to say, he's the easy one to like, man, I wish they could have just worked it out with him. You know?
I definitely agree. He's hard to beat on this list of guys we're most upset about. If he's who I would take, but probably my next closest is Daniel Jones. I was kind of looking forward to, and as of right now, the Vikings don't have a QB2. I think JJ is the only quarterback under contract right now.
Brett Rippon.
Is he on the team?
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But even still, the Vikings don't really have a true number 2. I've said Nick Mullins is the best QB2 in the league, but I think Daniel Jones, selfishly as a Vikings fan, could have been really good to have backing up J.J. McCarthy. And then as insurance, I mean, it would have been good to have Daniel Jones there if JJ's either not coming back healthy yet from his injury, which everything we've heard is he's getting good to go, and he's already putting some weight back on, getting on the practice field a little bit. But it would have been nice to have that insurance policy as opposed to, as of right now, it's either Brett Rippon or we don't know, or, oh my goodness, can you imagine the rumor of Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
I can't.
No.
I wouldn't want Aaron Rodgers.
In the words of Michael Scott from The Office, insert famous meme here. No, I really don't want that to happen. And I don't think there are many Vikings fans out there that would want that to happen. I think that's bad for this organization. And I think he's the type of player that tears down culture, doesn't build it up.
At this point, Aaron Rodgers, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, for that reason, I would have been perfectly happy with Daniel Jones coming back to the team, even if it was, maybe not that 14 million. And I think I saw on Twitter the Vikings were trying, and were offering a competitive contract, but the Colts, one, offered him probably more money than the Vikings were going to pay for QB2, and two, as far as Daniel Jones goes, I mean, you probably have a better path to being a bona fide starter in Indy right now than you are in Minnesota competing with J.J. McCarthy, who seems to be handed the keys right now, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So not super mad about Daniel Jones leaving, but it would have been nice to keep him.
Yeah, and honestly, I think having all of those quarterbacks on your roster last year was a luxury that you just aren't going to be able to afford long term. And so good for Mullins, Darnold, and Daniel Jones to go out and get what they can get.
Did you see the astronaut? Josh Dobbs also got something like a 2-year contract with the Patriots.
No, I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, and good for him. 2 years, I think it was like $8 million. I don't know the specific details, but that's not chump change for a guy that's not going to be the starter and is going to compete for a roster spot, but good for him. It's kind of nice to see these former Vikings quarterbacks at least latching on for more than a vet minimum deal elsewhere.
Well, they're graduates of KOC's quarterback school, So... No, I'm pretty confident that because KOC is the quarterback whisperer, and I think he has a lot of voice in who they bring in at that position, I'm confident that they'll find that number 2 guy. I don't know who it'll be yet. It could be Minshew. It could be, the Colts could cut Anthony Richardson in lieu of Daniel Jones.
Yeah, that would be shocking, but we've seen crazier things happen.
It would be. And there are still some other options out there too, the least of which I hope is Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, I'm confident that they'll get that squared away, and JJ will have somebody behind him ready to go. Yeah, back him up. Last thing I'll say about that is I think if Aaron Rodgers is brought in, that is a huge red flag to us as fans that either A, JJ isn't healthy enough to play, B, JJ isn't ready enough to play, not physically, but just, mentally, skill wise, which I don't think is the case, or 3, somebody in that front office is delusional enough to think that the Vikings can win with 41-year-old drug addicted quarterback as opposed to this 20-something-year-old kid fresh out of college who won a national championship, a little more than a year ago. Yeah. So
it's funny that you mentioned Rodgers' age, and I don't want to go down this Rodgers talking point too much, but I just saw on Twitter Ryan Bozer tweeted and said Aaron Rodgers is 1.5 years older than KOC, which is kind of crazy. I know KOC's a young head coach, but Rodgers, just let him go. If the Giants want to sign him or if the Steelers want to sign him, let him do that. And who knows, by the time we even release this episode, this could all be just a major moot point. I just think it wouldn't be productive for the Vikings to sign Aaron Rodgers unless he came out and said, I don't plan to be QB1. I'm not going to fight for that. I'm here to help.
That's not his MO.
No, and it shouldn't be. If he's still any player, if they're still ready to play, let him go play. He's
a future Hall of Famer, and I still think he's got a lot going on up here that a lot of other quarterbacks don't. He sees the game differently than anybody else, and if you watched his little Aaron Rodgers enigma thing, you kind of pick up on that a little bit, and he's married to the game, which is why he's not married to a woman. He's just one of those players that just pours so much of his time, passion, energy into his craft that a lot of people don't like him because of that. So I don't know that he's the right fit culturally for this team. The Vikings don't need a coach on the field. The Vikings need a quarterback who can take plays
and be coached on the field.
Be coached and see the play, make the right read, and move on to live another down, move on to live another game, and hopefully get into the playoffs. And I think Kwesi and KOC are doing that with the rest of the roster. So to me, it seems like all signs are pointing to Aaron Rodgers will not be a Viking. But you go on the internet and you read things and people say stuff, and then you're like, crap, that could be a reality.
You can even find people saying that the Vikings should sign Kirk Cousins again, who's technically not even available. Let's stop it, guys.
Really quick, on that list of departures, is there any departing player that you're like, oh, good, finally, good riddance?
Oh man, that's a good question.
And if there's not, and it's not like we have any ill feelings towards any of these guys. I think they were all great contributors to this team, but anybody that you're just like, good, finally it's done, it's over.
I think the closest I could get to that, and this is going to probably come off initially more negative than I intend it to, but Sam Darnold.
That's what I was going to say. I
think we've been saying it for really all season. We are Sam Darnold fans. I'm going to be a fan of Sam Darnold, the quarterback, the guy, forever. He gave us a magical 2024 season. Yeah, the last 2 games really sucked, but outside of that, it was a lot of fun. And the reason I could even say, like, okay, good, is that there's a lot of people, and for good reason, he had a magical season, a really good season. But there's a lot of people saying, sign him for a few more years. I probably said that starting, the first half of the season. But no, we have J.J. McCarthy. He is the future. At this point, he's the future. He's not done anything to make you think you need to make sure you have insurance to let JJ sit longer other than the injury, which is not a small deal. But yeah, I guess I am glad that Sam Darnold very quickly got a really good deal for him, and I'm rooting for him, unless it's against the Vikings, for the rest of his career. And I'm glad that now the Vikings can focus on their plan that they started last year, which was sign a bridge quarterback, draft a high guy, and go into the future that way. So you kind of think the same way?
Yeah, I'm just glad the drama's over. And I kind of felt that way with Kirk Cousins last year, and I think Kirk's situation was exacerbated by the fact that he was injured, and so the conversation started earlier with him.
Yeah.
We were talking about it, after the Packers game, when he went down with his Achilles tear, and it was just like, okay, we may have seen the last of Kirk Cousins ever, or the last of Kirk Cousins in purple at the very least, and then it was just the rest of the season. What's going to happen with Kirk? And we probably mentioned it every single week on this podcast. We'd have to go back and look, but that was the talker for the long time. What's going to happen with this guy? Where's he going to go? Do we bring him back? Do we pay him, a huge contract, or do we, try to get him back for just 1 year? Do we try to, do we honor his request to be a Viking forever?
That was smoke. That wasn't. He just like he said that.
He says that everywhere he goes now, and he's proven that. But anyways, I'm just glad that, like you said, it happened quickly. It's over. It's done. We don't have to sit here and ponder, like, okay, what's the Sam Darnold situation? No, the Sam Darnold situation is he's now Seattle's starting quarterback.
Yeah.
And
who knows if he turns out to, starting now, be the next Mahomes and breaks records and wins Super Bowls. Can you imagine if Seattle wins the Super Bowl in 2025-26 and Sam Darnold throws like 5,500 yards and like 60 touchdowns and he looks like the greatest quarterback to ever touch a football? Vikings fans, you and me included, will be like, what the heck?
To quote Leighton Glodek from a bonus episode that we released this last week, which, by the way, if you didn't catch that, go back and check that out. It's posted on Spotify and YouTube.
Everywhere, yeah.
And everywhere else you'd get a podcast. But we put out a little bonus episode with Leighton Glodek. He said, I think he mentioned several things that would be the most Vikings thing ever. That would be the most Vikings thing ever.
Yeah.
And it's happened so many times before where the Vikings have these quarterbacks for a time and then they go somewhere else and they play really, really well. And I think we could probably have a whole episode of quarterbacks who played for the Vikings and then went on to play better for other teams.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and also on the other side of the coin, to quote other friend of the show, Dustin Baker, he was saying for a while, right after Sam Darnold signed a year ago, that, it would be the most Vikings thing ever if Sam Darnold turned out to be good. And then we had this big debate and this huge divide between Vikings fans on whether or not they should re-sign him. And he turned out in a lot of ways to be right about that opinion. But I think as things sit this very moment, Vikings fans can be happy for Sam Darnold, can look back on 2024 with mostly fond memories, and be very excited for what the future brings. And a part of that is not only going to be JJ McCarthy and his development and KOC and his quarterback whispering abilities, but all of these awesome free agent additions the Vikings have made in the last few days, which we can get to in a little bit. But that the future, as of right now, which it always does for every team, is looking bright as of March 12th or whatever. The Vikings, we got a lot of things to be excited about.
I will say, I've talked to a few people. I'm a high school coach, those of you that don't know. And so I talk to a lot of athletic-minded people and people who pay attention to the NFL. And I was talking with my head coach. I'm an assistant under him right now. And he was asking me last night, he goes, what are the Vikings doing? Because he's a Bears fan. And I kind of wanted to just reply to him, what are the Bears doing? Because the Vikings are doing a whole lot. And he goes, well, no, at quarterback. And I'm like, it's JJ McCarthy, duh.
Yeah.
Like
the guy that they drafted higher than any other quarterback in Vikings history, at least.
In franchise history, yeah. And he's like, you really think they're going to go through JJ? Like, that's the answer? That's the solution? Yeah, it has been. And so it may be not as obvious to people outside of Vikings
which
fandom.
Which is wild.
But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, anytime a team drafts a quarterback in the first round, like Lamar Jackson was the 32nd pick the year he was picked. And that was even still like, okay, he's going to eventually be the guy. I think the Ravens still had Flacco on the roster when they drafted him, but it was still assumed like, okay, Lamar Jackson's the future. And that was before Jackson even took a snap. Yep. I mean, the Vikings drafted JJ. I think you're right. I think the general like Sports Center consensus was like, yeah, the Vikings, if they don't re-sign Sam Darnold, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have to get Aaron Rodgers. It's stuff like that. And I kind of think sometimes, like, is my opinion different than, the national media because I'm too close to this team? I pay too much attention. I think that's absolutely wrong on this. Like, obviously, JJ is the guy. That was the plan. Execute the plan.
I think this is something you've taught me. I created the monster of a Vikings fan that is you, but you've taught me some things in return like specifically who to follow on Twitter and stuff like that. You've turned me on to some good accounts. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. And I would say we have, especially on our Skol Hop account now, we've got a pretty good mixture of people. Like, we follow Paul Allen and Pete Bursich, who literally follow the team everywhere they go and talk about the team for their job and broadcast that out play by play every time the Vikings play a game. And then do a whole bunch of other stuff, in between, interviewing coaches and players and whatnot. But then we also follow guys like us who do what we do and have
just a few dudes or dudettes in someone's basement somewhere talking about the Vikings.
Yeah. And so I would like to think that we've got a pretty solid base of people that we kind of follow and we trust their opinions, and not everybody has the same opinion, but I would say the consensus inside of that Viking circle is JJ's the answer. Sam was great this year. He's the one night stand. He's the like, all right, that was fun. That was good. It really kind of sucked at the end, but
yeah,
good for you. Hopefully you do well. Hopefully we can beat you when we play you later on this year. But JJ's the guy.
Yeah,
and I think again that's the consensus in all of the like really committed Viking circles, whether they're like the Paul Allens who are like literally shoulder to shoulder with the players, or dudes in their basement like us. I think that's what most Vikings fans are thinking at this point.
And if you need proof that that's been the plan the whole time, that JJ was going to be the guy, all you need to do is go back. You could probably go back to a better example than this, but go back to the press conference or the first media availability that KOC had right when they found out, okay, JJ McCarthy, his surgery was the kind that he's going to be out for a year. KOC, his whole mentality was, we're going to be okay. We got this. Sam Darnold, we're rolling with him. He's QB1. But Vikings fans should, and I don't know the exact quote, but he basically said, fans, we should be excited about the idea that the future of this franchise, the franchise quarterback, is in the building right now. Yeah, he's injured. Yeah, he's got a rehab, and he'll be out this year. But he's in the building right now and learning, and the first steps are already being taken. So that right there tells me, obviously, even other than drafting him 10th overall, trading up one spot to get him, that tells me alone, okay, their mindset is Sam now, JJ in the future. And I don't think that should be any surprise.
So let's get into the moves, the shenanigans, we could say, that Kwesi's been getting into on the addition side of free agency. He's subtracted some players, but he's also added some players.
Man,
and this list, there are a few that I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. But there's quite a few of them on this list that I'm like, yes. And Kwesi and KOC both said, we're going to reinforce the trenches. That was kind of, I think they probably had a little powwow post
which they should. Thank goodness that
those
they talk.
They had a beer or two and said, hey, this is what we're going to say in these press conferences when we go out and we're in the public and we are asked, okay, what's your approach in free agency in the draft? Trenches. Yep. Offensive and defensive, because everybody knew that's where they needed to put their money where their mouth was. And if they're going to protect JJ on the offensive side of the ball, they need that. And we saw it on the defensive side of the ball too. They were just kind of weak on the defensive front. You had some help there, and you definitely had help on the outside, but it was the interior of both of those lines, offensive and defensive, that needed help. So holy buckets, have they gone out and they've done some stuff.
Yeah. So to that point, I think Kwesi had an exact quote right after the season, maybe during the combine or a little bit before. It was like, obviously we're going to focus on the inside offensive and inside defensive line. You could go back to really the wild card game against the Rams. Yeah, Sam Darnold kind of crumbled a little bit, but a lot of that was because he had nothing. He couldn't breathe the second he got the snap. That inside offensive line just crumbled. So we'll go through, I don't know, how do we want to do this? Do we want to list everything out and kind of do what we did with the departures, or do we want to go through one by one and talk about them each as we go through?
Well, let's maybe start with what we did, and I can list these ones out since you did the first one. And then, I think there are some that are definitely worth zooming in on and talking a little bit more about. So up to this point, kind of real time here, Wednesday, March 12th. These are the free agency additions that we know of. Ryan Kelly, center from the Colts.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Literally.
Big in more ways than one. Isaiah Rodgers, cornerback. Buddy Bolden, a safety. Byron Murphy Jr. was extended.
That's massive.
That's huge. I was really hoping Cam Bynum or Byron Murphy. I was kind of hoping for both, but I knew that was kind of too good to be true. But I'm glad Byron Murphy got the nod. I'm happy for Cam Bynum. I think he'll do great wherever he ends up. Well, he's in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
But Byron Murphy, man, he had a breakout season this year. So really excited that the Vikings get him back. Aaron Jones, running back, getting to stay with the Vikings. That's a big thing. He's a big culture piece.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if they can find another guy to kind of come in and be the RB2 or the RB1B with him, man, the Vikings running game could be pretty stout this year. Ryan Wright extended as the punter. That's good news. Just experienced, familiar with the system. And he's just a good punter. So it's good to know you've got those good specialists there. Theo Jackson, he was the first one. I think he was kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of all of these signings. But Theo Jackson was extended. He was kind of the one that when he got extended, it was like, well, that means Cam Bynum's probably gone or Harrison Smith is probably retiring.
Fun fact, Theo Jackson was also the first re-signing of the Vikings last year too. We had a TikTok about it.
Oh, really?
He was the first guy that they re-upped on. Maybe they had some like futures players that they always do right after their season ends, which is essentially just their practice squad. But yeah, Theo Jackson after 23 and 24 was the first player to re-sign with the Vikings.
I see. I didn't even know that, but that's pretty cool. And then I think these next three really happened just yesterday. They happened like Tuesday
morning.
Yeah. It was just like, boom, all of a sudden we all woke up and it was like, all right, the Vikings have done some stuff. Jonathan Allen.
Massive.
Big defensive tackle. From where? Where's
Washington.
He from? Washington, that's
He's
right.
been with the Commanders, I think, his whole career.
So big signing there. Will Fries, a guard from Indianapolis who played next to Ryan Kelly, the center that we've already mentioned. So there's chemistry there already. And that's just added protection. And I think he's quite a bit younger than Ryan Kelly. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think, let me double check on that.
But just adding more pieces to that offensive front at the guard position. And then Javon Hargrave, a little bit older, but a defensive tackle from San Francisco who... if you've played for the Niners and you have starting experience with that team, you are a Super Bowl caliber team, and that's him. So to get him at defensive tackle as well, you've got now Harrison Phillips at that nose tackle position. Then you've got Hargrave and Jonathan Allen at the tackle position. And then your outside linebackers are
stacked,
Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. Holy buckets.
Yeah.
And all five of those guys along the front of that defensive line are free agents that have been picked up. I think, Harrison Phillips might have been he wasn't a Kwesi pickup, was he? Was he a Rick Spielman pickup?
I don't know, because he's been with the team now three-ish years.
3 years, yeah.
I do know Harrison Phillips just got a contract extension, I think right before the 24 season started, or right as it was starting. But yeah, relatively new-ish Viking.
But that is an entirely rebuilt defensive front. I'm really excited about that.
Will Fries, 26 years old, by the way.
Yeah, so he's quite a bit younger than Ryan Kelly, because I think, isn't Ryan Kelly 30?
31.
31?
Yeah,
okay.
He'll be 32 by the time the season starts. So a little bit older, but these linemen, if they can keep healthy, they should be okay. Although I think Kelly and Fries both had some health concerns. They missed some games last season due to health, but still, the healthy versions of those guys are just incredible.
Yeah, and then, not to mention on the offensive side of the ball, Christian Darrisaw. You get him healthy.
Yeah, I think he might be halfway through the season when we finally get him back.
Yeah, but boy, holy buckets. You get Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, Christian Darrisaw, and then we'll talk about the other pieces of the offensive line later, but man, that could be one of the better offensive lines in football and one of the better defensive lines in football. You talk about Kwesi and KOC putting their money where their mouth is. They sure did that in free agency, and we haven't even gotten to the draft yet.
Yeah.
So,
well, speaking of the draft, the Vikings officially got that comp pick that we've been talking about for a while now, because they lost Kirk Cousins last year, and neither of us are going to pretend that we're smart enough to understand that comp pick formula. But however it worked out, the Vikings got the highest, like the earliest in the draft comp pick that was given to any team. They only got one, so now the Vikings have four draft picks. A first,
a third,
that third rounder, which is the 33rd pick in the third round. So it's essentially in that gap between the third and fourth rounds,
and then 2 fifths,
and then 2 fifths. Yeah. So I think 2 picks within the top 100. So this draft might not be the greatest unless they find a couple diamonds in the rough. And you always want to find a starter level player in the first round. But man, free agency really, they did it. I think they spent the most, or they guaranteed the most money out of any other team in the NFL during this free agency period so far. And I think now's the time to say it. They lost Cam Bynum, but my goodness,
Harrison Smith is coming back.
Harrison Smith, Harry the freaking Hitman. Tonight, we're not breaking news because you're listening to this, tomorrow. But tonight, it was news that Harrison Smith is coming back. He was already still under contract for 2025. But it was one of those like extra years. His base salary was supposed to be like $1 million or the minimum or something like that. So I think he got a significant raise. Evan, I don't know if you've seen what Harrison Smith, his contract is going to be. I think the details are out so far.
I think it's like 10, a little more than 10 guaranteed, and then up to $14 million in incentives.
Okay,
which I think that's a really good contract for a guy as old as he is. And who's still playing at a high level like he is, because I think he has every ability to go out and get all 14 of those $1 million
depending on what the details are. And it's funny because this will be his 14th season and maybe his last, but we've been saying it might be his last for 3-4 years now. We are both massive Harrison Smith fans, even if he is a shell of what he once was. But last year, he was as good as he's ever been. And I think at this point last year, we were, 1, talking, is he going to come back? And 2, talking, okay, if he is coming back, I think they even might have officially said he's going to be on some sort of like a pitch count.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case. He ended up...
He
for a
played
majority of the game
of the snaps.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's probably just him, being hard-nosed and like, I'm not coming out. I don't need to. And obviously he's healthy enough to be confident to come in. We all saw his press conference, or his interviews in the locker room after the loss to the Rams in the playoffs, where he was emotional, and thank goodness he wasn't making any decisions right then. I did see a funny tweet from Ben Lieber where he quote tweeted the Vikings announcement that Harry's coming back, and Ben Lieber was like, well, I guess I cried in an Arizona locker room for no reason, which same bro, but I wasn't in the locker room, and I didn't actually shed tears, but man, I was feeling it. I'm so pumped.
I watched his post-game press conference at the end of after the playoff loss, and I won't lie, my eyes were a little misty. I had some precipitation in those eye sockets there.
Yep.
It's like, man, this is an era coming to an end. If he's done, that's tough. That's gonna hit me right here, and I'm pumped. I'm excited. I saw it minutes before you got here.
Yeah,
and I was just like, yes.
I think. And we can go on a little Harrison Smith tangent. I think he has earned a mini tangent in every episode if we really wanted to.
Yeah.
I think if you just look at stats, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yep,
he's
for sure.
And not that it should matter a difference between first ballot and not first ballot, but he, to me, is a first ballot Hall of Famer. They might as well put his name up in the Ring of Honor at US Bank Stadium right now. I get they don't do that, but he will be. It's just a matter of time. He is an all-time Viking, and when the Vikings retire the number 22, it should be, I don't know if this has happened before, it should officially be dual retired. This is something we both said.
We've been saying this since pretty much the inception of this podcast.
Yep. Dual retired for Harrison Smith and Paul Krause.
Yep.
Arm in arm, because those are 2 of the greatest Vikings of all time. And I couldn't be more happy that Harrison Smith is still on the field for the Vikings in 2025, even if this is the year that they actually do a pitch count. And even if he, isn't that good this year. But like I said, the way he played last year, there's nothing to tell us that he won't be halfway decent this coming year. He's as valuable in the locker room as he is on the field. I'm so jacked about this.
So I dropped some of these stats on you as you walked into my house tonight because I was so pumped, and I was just looking at Pro Football Reference for let me just remind myself how good Harrison Smith is. 4 times in his career, 2014, 2017, 2020, and 2022, he's had 5 interceptions.
That's wild.
Which is absolutely insane. To get 5 picks in a season is kind
and those
of
are so spread out. It's not like he had a peak of 4 fantastic years right in a row and then he totally dropped off.
But what's crazy is 2014, he was 25 years old. It was his 3rd season in the league. He had 5 picks for 150 yards. Granted, one of those was for 81 yards and a touchdown, I'm assuming. But
I might be wrong. I think he holds or shares the franchise record of pick sixes. I might be wrong on that, but something's ringing a bell in there. I think he is the active NFL leader of interceptions as far as active players goes.
Yeah, so it says here, italic career totals indicate players the active leader. So he has the most interceptions for active players right now in the league at 37.
And when you play 14 years at even a okay level, if you play, that's a longevity record, but still, every Vikings fan should be a fan of Harrison Smith. He's never done anything on or off the field to make you feel anything bad about rooting for him. He seems like a great guy. Definitely a great Viking, and I don't use that great word lightly. He's amazing. I'm glad that he's still on the team, and I'm glad we don't have to, at least as of right now, don't have to see him in like a Seahawks uniform or that he's not like having 1 or 2 years elsewhere. He's ours. He's a Viking. I think he takes pride in being a Viking because I think there's been a couple of times he could have gotten more money elsewhere. A lot of respect for that guy. I'm a fan of his for life.
I've also just I've read some stuff too that when there's the inevitable rookie hazing that goes on, and the big dogs will take the rookies out for dinner and then stick the rookies with the gigantic bill at the really fancy restaurant or whatever. I've heard and read he kind of just steps in and he's like, nah, it's on me, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. Was it Cam Bynum that
it might have been, or somebody, or Ivan Pace, or
there's something,
Josh Metellus, or somebody, one of those younger guys on this defense came out and said he pulled us to the side and just said, no, I got it. I'll take care of it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. They're just messing with you. He's the consummate teammate.
I found the story. It was Cam Bynum specifically that it came out. Cam Bynum would be up for that bill when it came, and I don't know if it was every single time or one time or a few times. Harrison Smith, just, you know what? Yeah, I got this. You don't need to. You're a rookie. You don't. You're like a 5th round or 6th round rookie. I got this, and never said oh, but you owe me or you got to carry my pads. At least not publicly, But he's a good guy, good teammate, good Viking. Throw him up in the Ring of Honor right now.
Yeah. So to say that Kwesi has been up to some shenanigans, I think is an understatement. This guy's been working round the clock, nonstop. He's probably been on the phone with Harrison Smith multiple times, hey, let's get a deal done. Let's figure this out. We want you back. But then he's also been on the phone with other guys too, like Ryan Kelly and Will Fries from Indianapolis. All right, let's do this. Let's make this happen.
What's your favorite move, Ev? Or maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a few guys.
I think right now, my favorite move, plural, move in tandem, I guess. They happen separately, but I think they're going to have a cumulative effect. is Ryan Kelly and Will Fries.
Yeah.
I think solidifying the offensive line is something we need. I texted you almost right away after Ryan Kelly was signed, and I said, this means that Garrett Bradbury's gone, right? Like,
well, I'm going to ask, yeah.
It has to mean that he's gone. I think, in my opinion, my take on it is, yes, Bradbury is as good as gone. The writing is on the wall. He's not going to be a Viking anymore. Ryan Kelly is a top 5 center, I think, in the league.
I don't know enough about that. I just know he's solid and definitely an upgrade at center.
Well, even just the size itself, like he's just a bigger human being than Bradbury is. So, and I think he might be, from what I've read and understand about him, he's a little more balanced. He's not. Bradbury was great when it came to pass protection, but he wasn't so good in run protection.
Well, and just he every once in a while would get bowled over. Bradbury didn't have quite the size. I think you mentioned it last week or sometime recently. Bradbury is. It was just he's smart and he can make the right calls, but just sometimes, and he overall played at a above average level overall, but there was enough times that he got bowled over that eventually you're excited to sign Ryan Kelly at 32 years old.
Mass on mass will have an effect, and he just didn't have the body mass to really hold down the fort at center. So I think the writing's on the wall there for him. I think he's a goner. I'm
going to disagree. So okay. I agree on the Kelly and Fries signings as probably the most exciting so far, or some of the most exciting. They're all good. I'll ask you later if you hate any of them, but yeah, they're all good. I'm going to disagree and say I don't necessarily think this is an automatic Bradbury is gone. Could it absolutely happen? Sure. Yeah, I mean, no player is 100% safe. I think there might be a team that would be willing to give up something, a 6th, 7th round pick for Bradbury. I think the Vikings save something like $3 million or something if they just cut Bradbury outright, which, I mean, they're not hurting for cap space. I think even with the Harrison Smith signing, they have something like $40 million in cap space left for this season. That's quite a bit. But I think if Bradbury could show any sense of position flexibility, and maybe he could, if he's a better guard than Blake Brandel, or, and I don't think this will happen by any means, if Ryan Kelly plays guard and is a better guard than Blake Brandel, I think there is a pathway for Bradbury to remain on the team. It's not an easy pathway. He's definitely got to fight for his spot, but I don't think it's an automatic gone. I think Bradbury has earned at least the right to fight for a job in camp or in OTAs or something like that, but I don't think it's an immediate, okay, this guy's 100% out of there now.
Yeah, I think we definitely disagree.
And that's fine. That's fine.
I think the Vikings signed Ryan Kelly for a reason. He's experienced. He's bigger. I think he's going to slide right in. And I think the Vikings will have no problem moving on from Bradbury. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Bradbury was a Spielman draft pick.
Yeah, and he was a first-round pick and definitely a Spielman pick. But yeah, he's just undersized. And I think for his size has played amazingly, but his size has definitely got him. Yeah, it's definitely, messed him up a little bit a few times, and enough times that it's like, well, he didn't need to give up that sack. Somebody with 40 more pounds on him wouldn't have given up that sack. Like when linebackers are a little bit bigger than your center, that's saying something.
Well, it's kind of like when you live in a 3-bedroom house and you're like, yeah, this is good. This is fine. I can do this. And then all of a sudden you get a huge pay raise and you're like, no, I can afford that 5-bedroom house or that 6-bedroom house. Let's do that. All right. I feel like that's kind of where it's like, no, all right, we're upgrading here at that position. Like, we don't have to settle for middle of the road anymore. Like, we've got this guy that can no, I've been driving a Honda CR-V for however long. It's
I drive a Dodge Stratus.
I drove a CR-V for a long time. It works. It's great. It's reliable. And then you're just like, No, actually, I have a little bit more money now. I can go out and buy something nicer, something a little bit more comfortable, and and I think that's where the Vikings are with Ryan Kelly. Who knows what will happen? They could flex him out to a guard position. They could flex Bradbury out to a guard position. Yeah, it really depends.
If I had to make a bet on what will probably happen, I think I would bet that you're right, that Bradbury won't be on the team this year, that Ryan Kelly, I think without question, Ryan Kelly is your center number one, like regardless of whether or not Bradbury's on the roster. So if I were betting on it, I'd say you're right. But I also don't think, like I said, I don't think Bradbury is 100% immediately gone. He's not going to have the role that he had before, and for good reason. Ryan Kelly is definitely an upgrade, and I'm super pumped about it.
All right. Who on this list are you like, meh, not really that excited about him, doesn't matter, probably won't be a Viking long term? Anybody so far?
So, I think while it's a good signing, and I would root for them to still sign. Like if it were up to me, I'd say, yeah, go ahead and do it the way you did it. Aaron Jones at running back, just for the reason that he plays running back, and I think he's going to be like 31 or 32 this year. They signed him for a 2-year contract. What was it, like 2 years, $20 million? Yeah, and I think it's a very team friendly. That's another thing on all of these contracts. Any of the details I've seen so far, they've all been pretty team friendly. Not to the point where it's like, oof, I feel bad for that player, like they got hosed, but I think most of them, like the Vikings, are going to be in good shape whether they pan out or not. But yeah, this Aaron Jones, I am a Aaron Jones fan as a person, as a player. I like him. I like that he's on the team, but like I was saying a year ago today, like he's going to get injured at some point. I'm so glad I was wrong about him for the 24 season, because he got banged up a couple of times, but he never missed 4, 5, 6. He never missed a lot of games. He never hurt the Vikings by being on the team and taking up a spot and cap space. And I don't think he's going to hurt the Vikings this year by taking up a spot in cap space. But I think at some point his age is going to catch up to him as a running back, and especially if they don't do anything like draft a guy or sign someone else, the Vikings have to add to having Aaron Jones on the roster, because that's such an injury-prone position. So if I had to choose one that I'm not super pumped about, it's the Aaron Jones one, even though I'm still not mad about it. What about you? Any of them you're not super excited about?
Yeah, and I'm going to take this from Dustin Baker a little bit, because I consulted his tweets on all of this, because he does such a good job of summarizing everything that's happened in the last couple of days. I don't know if it's Bubba Bolden or Buddy Bolden.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think the guy has ever played an NFL snap, and I think he's had some suspension problems. So I'm I just don't know enough about him. And according to Pro Football Reference, if it's Bubba Bolden, who played for the Saints, I think, but never actually played, hasn't registered a regular season. No. Was it the Saints? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Either way, this guy has not actually done much. He's bounced around quite a bit. I don't know if he's made a start at all. I can see what you're saying. This one is kind of weird, because the timeline of when they signed him was at the same time as all these other signings in the NFL. On Monday, we're like, oh, Sam Darnold, oh, Justin Fields, oh, this trade's happening, oh, Bubba Bolden to the Vikings. Like, it just seems so out of place. Like
it was weird.
This seems like the kind of announcement along the same lines as like, okay, this undrafted free agent is signing right after the draft. Like, not one that's like, oh yeah, all these crazy things are happening. And just the idea that even Kwesi was like taking a minute to be like, oh yeah, Bubba, yeah, we'll offer him the minimum or whatever, ended up being like, let's go for it. Like, that he took a minute to get that done for a guy like this, which we would both be jumping for joy if this guy ended up being like, holy cow, where did he come from? Like, he's finally figured it out, and he's the Ivan Pace for the Vikings. Like, nobody thought he'd be anything. Like, neither of us are saying that's going to happen. He's literally your least favorite one so far, but it was weird.
Yeah, I think the timing was weird, and I think the player himself is just kind of odd too, especially with now Harrison Smith re-signing, and gosh, who else? Now I'm like blanking on what we've already talked about, and we've talked about a lot of stuff. Theo Jackson, that's the other safety. I think those are your two proverbial starters at this point. Harrison Smith and Theo Jackson are going to start at safety, aren't they?
That's the thought, unless Josh Metellus, which I've also heard. Theo Jackson, Josh Metellus, he kind of had his own position like created for him. He's kind of like the roamer. He's sometimes a linebacker, sometimes a cornerback. He's listed as a safety. Like, I don't know how many actual games Josh Metellus has started, just because he plays everywhere, and like he doesn't fit into, he's a square peg that they're trying to fit into a circle hole, but like he just plays everywhere and does it well. I've heard Theo Jackson, as far as depth goes, the Vikings defense sees Theo as the guy right behind Josh Metellus, in that they do everything. We will probably see Theo Jackson play at some of the position. He might take a defensive tackle snap, just like Josh Metellus has before. So maybe it's going to be Josh Metellus and Harrison Smith as safeties in the backfield.
Could be.
Free agency's still not done. But yeah, I don't know enough about specifics to say like, okay, here's who I would pencil in at starters at all these spots.
And I mean, truthfully, I forgot about Metellus, not because he's forgettable, but because he plays so many positions. Yeah. It's just like, well, when I think of safety, I don't necessarily jump right to Josh Metellus. I honestly view Metellus more as a linebacker, playing in the middle of the field and being able, like you said, being able to go everywhere, come up onto the line, go out to that cornerback position, go deep in the safety. Like he seems like he's all over the place. So.
And who knows, maybe that's something that the Vikings address in the draft is, a true safety, free safety, strong safety, or whatever, to actually hold the fort in that spot next to Harrison Smith, or in lieu of Harrison Smith if they finally decide to throw that pitch count on him. So I don't know. That's kind of exciting to me. That's not something I'm concerned about, but that safety position, like, as far as Flores' defense goes, especially now that they've shored up that line, the defensive line through free agency with Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, I'm not concerned about it at all as of right now. I'm excited about it.
And I really think on both sides of the ball, and I think any old guy coach will tell you, and I'm probably starting to sound like an old man a little bit, but it starts in the trenches. You got to have solidified guys up in front, being able to hold off the other team, and that's
lo
what
and
it comes
behold,
back
the Vikings
down.
added 2 Pro Bowlers right up. Slightly older Pro Bowlers, but 2 Pro Bowlers right up front.
I think 4. I think you've got 2 on the offensive side and 2 on the defensive side.
Yeah, I don't know specifically if Kelly or Fries have ever been.
Yeah, I don't know if they've been Pro Bowlers, but I mean, shoot, they could be. For the Vikings this next year, they certainly could be. While you're looking that up really quick, free agency is not over yet as of this moment now, and we still have the draft to look forward to in a little more than a month. About 5 weeks the draft is going to be happening. What else do the Vikings need to do, in your opinion? What positions do they need to focus on, and who do you hope they go after?
I mean, I still think they need to figure out the running back position a little bit, just for insurance. Obviously, QB2. I'm not saying, first round pick for either of these, but you need to shape your quarterback room. We've said J.J. McCarthy, he's the guy, but I mean, anybody is one broken ankle from now you got to go to the next guy. So for me, it's filling out that quarterback room, making sure you have a solid running back room, especially now that the offensive line is definitely upgraded. Barring injury, the offensive line should be way better in 25 than they were in 24.
That's the hope.
All due respect to Ed Ingram, who that's one that I'm surprised he hasn't been cut yet.
And
Ed
could be
Ingram
now.
and Dalton Reisner, who is a fan favorite, good guy, but for whatever reason, the Vikings have now. Will Fry's got 5 years, I think like $80 million. Like he's a starter.
He's a starter, which means Reisner, Ingram probably gone.
Yeah. Well, and or Blake Brandel. Like I didn't think Brandel played poorly last year, but still my point is, with an upgraded offensive line, that kind of takes the excuse away from the running back position. And as much as I kind of crapped on it a few minutes ago, Aaron Jones proved that when he can be the bell cow, even at his upgraded age, I think he had like 11, almost 1,200 rushing yards this past season, his career high. So like he's proved he can be 1,000-yard back even when he's not 100% healthy all the time. So imagine having the upgraded offensive line that the Vikings will have this season. So fill out that running back room, shore up QB2 at least. After that, everything else for me is gravy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think you have to find somebody to complement Aaron Jones in the backfield, and you have to find somebody to back up JJ McCarthy. That's it. That's it. And if you do that in free agency or the draft, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to reference friend of the show, Dustin Baker, really quick. Yesterday, he tweeted something that I kind of resonated with. He said, the Vikings might be in a spot to truly draft best player available, no matter the pick number. And I don't remember that in my lifetime. And he's older than us. Not by much, but like that's saying something. Like, it's not like we're targeting specific things. We need a running back. We need a quarterback. We need offensive line. We need a kicker. We need whatever. Just whoever's the best available, pick them up, man. Like, nope. And to only have 4 draft picks, like, no sweat, hombre. Like, we got this.
And it's for that reason I really think they're at least going to try like hell to trade out of the first round.
Yeah, to get more picks.
Yeah, unless like they've identified, unless a guy like Ashton Jeanty or, you know, their number one guy ends up falling to 24, which is crazy. That's not going to happen. But unless that happens, like I think the Vikings would, if they can get the right value, trade down, get a second round pick, and maybe, I don't know what the value would be, but if they can get a few more picks and be able to have some more flexibility with depth guys, because that's what you're looking at. I don't think you don't need to find, you know, an absolute starter at really any position in this draft. Like you're not going to the draft saying, crap, we have to find our quarterback, or crap, we don't have a number one wide receiver. Like, yeah, sure. Could they really try hard to find a left guard? Sure. Could they try really hard to find, I mean, we said it earlier, a safety? Sure. But it's not such a desperate need that they have to do it, because they were able to sign, if they weren't able to get Byron Murphy Jr., we'd be saying cornerback. And maybe that's the answer too. Like, I don't know, after him, it's a lot of unproven guys. It's nice that you're getting back Mekhi Blackman. But, I mean, outside of Byron Murphy Jr., there's not a lot there. So maybe cornerback, but anywhere else, like you're looking for depth and competition, and the draft is just going to be the cherry on top. So maybe with no pressure, or less pressure, Kwesi can finally actually find the diamond in the rough that he's been, you know, eluding him in the draft for a handful of years. Yeah,
and maybe he actually does it this year, whereas, you know, in the past it's been like, you got to find him in the draft, and I think that was Spielman's forte, was the draft.
That is the way you build a team. The best teams ever, the dynasties, the Chiefs of the league, they build their team through the draft.
But I think anymore too, teams are built through free agency, and teams aren't built for this long-lasting success. I think what we're seeing with the Chiefs right now is kind of an anomaly in today's NFL. I don't know that we're going to see a lot of that sustained success long term anymore. I think we're going to see this like, yeah, they were good for a year because they had a bunch of guys on 1-year contracts, and then they all left, or they all retired, or they all whatever, you know. I think that's the future of the NFL, and I think the NFL is going to become more and more like the NBA, where there's this huge carousel of free agents every year, and it'll create a lot of fodder for us on a podcast where we're like, ooh, this is juicy, this is fun, but it'll suck for fans because we're like, no, because our favorite players, the ones that we get attached to, they're going to leave, you know, and that's going to suck. Really quick, final question here.
Oh, I have one more question for you, but final question from Ev.
All right. Final question from me. If you had to pick a quarterback to be the QB2 next year, and this is QB2. We are assuming JJ McCarthy is QB1. There's no other QB1. You can pick Minshew, Winston, Locke, Wentz, or Rodgers. Who's your QB2 to back up JJ McCarthy next year?
I don't want to be preposterous because there's no question Aaron Rodgers, future Hall of Famer.
I threw that one in there just for fun.
One of the greatest to ever touch a football. There's no doubt about that.
For sure.
But we spent 20 minutes earlier talking about how much we don't want him because at 41, I would want, you know, the 25-year-old version of him, but not the 41. That's fine. We're good. Of everybody else, give me Minshew.
Okay.
Honestly, okay, so there's not a bad choice. There's not really a bad choice, especially since you're talking QB2. Maybe Drew Lock I'd take too, but honestly, Minshew, he's probably the most experienced of the list that you just named out. I've been a Gardner Minshew fan since the Jorts era and the stash in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah.
He's had flashes where he's proven, kind of like Nick Mullins a couple of times in his career, that if they need to come in as the next guy, not the guy, but the next guy, Minshew and Mullins too, but Minshew has kind of proven he can get you by. He can, like Nick Mullins last year, come in on 3rd and 24 and throw a dart to Aaron Jones and get a first down, and then come back out and Sam Darnold's good to go again. Minshew would be the guy on that list that got me the most excited as QB2.
You know who I would pick?
Aaron Rodgers?
No, definitely not. I will throw up in my mouth if that happens. No, I want Jameis Winston purely for the entertainment value. I just want to thank the Lord for the opportunity to play in some snow today. That's what I want.
A name we haven't said. That would be hilarious, and I'd laugh at it, and I'd be all for it, but I wouldn't choose to do it. But a name we haven't said as far as QB2, Joe Flacco. I'd be okay with that.
I think he might be done.
We've said that for a few years now.
I think he might be done. I don't know he's got a lot of football left in him.
His little bit of magic that he sprinkled into the Browns a couple years ago.
Yep.
There's something there.
And then he came back with the Colts this year, and it was like, well, Anthony Richardson isn't the answer, so you get it. And then it was like, well, you're not the answer either, so let's see what Anthony Richardson can do.
Yeah, but this is purely not like, okay, I don't believe in JJ, so we need a good guy behind him. This is purely like, okay, have a good guy next to him in the QB room at the meetings.
Sure.
Come in a pinch if you need it for injury or something else. But
Flacco's definitely that veteran presence, that Super Bowl winning quarterback guy.
Did he get an MVP? I don't know.
He might have. He's definitely he's what I hoped Kirk would be someday, with this franchise. And of course, that's just not the way the league works anymore. And Kirk went and got more money elsewhere, which he should. And so did Sam Darnold, which he should. It's the way the league is set up now. But no, I don't disagree with you necessarily, but
that's fine.
I'd rather see Minshew or Winston or Locke. And honestly, I'd probably rather see Carson Wentz over Joe Flacco or Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Aaron would be too much.
Yeah.
It'd be different, like I said earlier, if Aaron came in and said, listen, I'm not here to, usurp anybody. I don't want the attention on me, which he's never said before.
He will.
It'd be different if he was like, I am here to help develop JJ McCarthy, which again, one, isn't his job, wouldn't be his job.
Nope.
Two, he's never said that before. I don't want him. Let him go ruin the Giants a little bit more. I'll say hot take for the, fifth week in a row. If Aaron Rodgers signs with the Giants, that will be the first nail in the coffin, or maybe the fifth, because I think the nails are already starting to get pounded in the coffin for Dable and whoever their GM is. If Aaron Rodgers signs with the Giants, Rodgers, Dable, their head coach, and then what's his name at GM, the three of them will not be Giants this time next year. Guaranteed. I'd bet money on that. And that might be still the case for the coach and GM anyways. But yeah, that would be such a storm of just awfulness if wherever he goes, it's not going to work out.
Well, he wouldn't have to get a new apartment because I'm sure he's got something in New York City already. But anyways, we don't want Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota.
We've
stay away.
We've accidentally spent like half this podcast talking about Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so
what's your final question?
So the Vikings, I thought about doing this as a whole segment, but we can just do it for one. The Vikings have a handful of players, just like every team does, handful of players that played for them last year that are now free agents. Of those players, which Dustin Baker on VikingsTerritory.com put a good list together, of those players that are still currently free agents that haven't re-signed with the Vikings or anyone else, who would you most be excited that the Vikings signed? So we don't have to go through the whole list, but heavy hitters are, Stephon Gilmore, Kamu Grugier-Hill, whose spot started a few times, Brandon Powell, Cam Akers, Dalton Reisner, guys like that. Who would you be okay with or pretty pumped about the Vikings re-signing?
You left a few off the list. The few that I would actually maybe consider more than any of the ones you listed. David Quessenberry is one that I would consider.
Offensive tackle.
I think he's just a good depth guy. And he's filled in admirably when they've needed him. I don't think he's a starter, and especially with the additions to the offensive line, I don't know that he finds a starting spot, but those guys do better when they get breaks in games, when they have a chance to come out, catch their breath, and someone else can go in. But those guys do better when they have the chemistry with the guys around them, and that's where I think Quessenberry's pretty valuable.
Yeah,
like he's kind of been the rotational guy on the line in different spots. I think he's been in a few different places, and I think he's even played guard a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know about guard, but he's been on the team at least the last 2 years. In 23, he came in for a handful of games when Brian O'Neill was injured, definitely towards the end of the season, and played admirably. And then obviously for a game or two before Cam Robinson was traded for, came in, and it definitely immediately came in once once Christian Darrisaw went down. He's definitely a swing tackle. I don't know how much guard he's played. He's getting up there in age. He's 32, 33, 34, something like that, and would be a vet minimum kind of guy. So that's a sneaky good. I wouldn't have thought about that, but now I'm on board with that. Sign him back.
I think the other one in a similar spot is Cam Robinson, and I think the only reason you bring him back is because, as you mentioned a little bit ago, Darrisaw doesn't come back right away, probably from his knee injury. And if you're going to solidify that offensive line, you need somebody at that left tackle position that's going to hold down the fort. And Cam Robinson was not Christian Darrisaw, but he's probably the next best thing to Christian Darrisaw that was available to the Vikings. And I don't know that you're going to replace him. I think you might be better rolling with Cam Robinson and just being real with him. Like, hey, man, you're the guy to start, when CD comes back, he's the guy.
Yep. And then even if it was like, hey, we'll do you right. We'll trade you if you want.
Yeah.
After a CD comes back. So maybe my answer to that would be both Questenberry and Robinson, just for the continuity and the uncertainty with CD right now. Sorry, did I definitely cut you off there?
No, I think we're in agreement on that though. And I think that just solidifies the offensive line that I think was an obvious weak point for this Vikings team. I think Cam Robinson just fit right in. He slid right into this very needy position. The left tackle is one of the most important positions for a right-handed quarterback in the league.
Absolutely.
You got to protect your blind side. You got to make sure that whoever's over there isn't going to let anybody come take you out as you're back turned ready to throw. The movie The Blind Side taught us that.
Yeah.
So I think he's valuable, Cam Robinson is, for that thing alone. And then Questenberry as that swing tackle, as you mentioned. I think just solidifying the offensive line is super important, especially for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
He's going to have a lot of pressure to go out and perform. And so I think those are the two I would try to target for sure.
Absolutely. And for me too, on that list of other kind of guys that might not have a robust market, but could come back, I'd definitely be okay with Stephon Gilmore coming back. He's up there. He might even have a better market than the Vikings are able to give him, but if he's available at some point, he only helps to bring back. Kamu Grugier-Hill, he had a few spot starts between Blake Cashman coming out and Ivan Pace being out for a little bit. Kamu only came in and played pretty well. Shaq Griffin, he was a really good depth guy at cornerback. Brandon Powell, I think he's kind of you can't be mad about it if he comes back. He's a halfway decent wide receiver 4-ish type. I think he's got some returning ability in there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those guys that were Vikings last year that would be available for pretty cheap this year. But if they get a better market elsewhere, good for them. Yeah, I don't know. Any other of those guys that you'd want? I think
one more honorable mention that I would give would be Jerry Tillery. I think when he was originally signed, we were all just kind of like, nah, okay, whatever.
Former first rounder, hadn't really done anything.
But I mean, KOC saw something in that guy. He got countless game balls, and I think he's that depth guy at that defensive tackle position. I don't know how much nose tackle he was playing, and I don't know how much of a rotation there was with him and Harrison Phillips. But I think he and Harrison Phillips developed some good chemistry. I wouldn't be surprised if Tillery's gone after this year. He could be a one-and-done kind of guy. Yeah. But I'd love to see him back in purple. And I thought he was humble, he was hardworking, and I think that's what the coaches saw in him. And yeah, I'd give him an honorable mention of, hey, come back. Let's see what else we can do.
Yeah. You know what gets more than an honorable mention?
This beer?
This freaking beer,
it's
man.
So good.
The Shenanigans Irish Red Ale from Millstream Brewing Company out of Amana, Iowa. Good grief. The only thing that I could maybe think slightly negative about it is when you think St. Paddy's Day, you think not one beer, not two beers. You think
you're starting to talk like a LeBron here. Not one, not two.
But on St. Patrick's Day, if you're having some beers, you're not having one or two. You're having a handful.
Yeah.
At 7%, you shouldn't have a handful of these. You should
not have a handful of those.
Maybe start with one of these and then go for the green, 4% Bud Light or whatever. And that's grasping for straws at something negative to say about it. This beer is delicious.
Super good.
We kind of mentioned that it had kind of a boozy flavor to it, but I think that's more just the tanginess flavor to it.
Yeah, you can smell it, but it's not overpowering. Yeah. It's not something that you're going to be like, oh, this is not beer. We're bordering on tequila or something here. Like, it's not that.
So it's delicious. I will say, if you're looking for your go-to to buy a 30-pack of it, beer for St. Patrick's Day, maybe don't buy a 30-pack. They don't sell a 30-pack, but don't buy 30 of these. Maybe get a 4-pack and start with 1 or 2, split the other 1 or 2 with your buddy, and then go for the 4%, cheap beer. This is delicious. I would have this any day of the week. Hot weather, cold weather, sitting by the fire, out on the boat. This is amazing. I like it a lot.
Yeah, really good beer for sure. I'll probably find at least one more of these in the next couple of weeks before they fly off the shelves.
And if you really wanted, with enough green dye, it's a pretty caramel colored, pretty dark, or pretty hazy, not dark, colored beer. But if you really wanted, you could turn it green.
You could.
Yeah.
They turn the Chicago River green every year. You can turn this beer green, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Bears fans, go ahead and go take a dip in the Chicago River if you want. But yeah, I like it a lot. Thank you for getting it and bringing it. Thank you, Millstream, for brewing such a great beer. I still have yet to have even a mid beer from Millstream.
Yeah. Can't complain.
They've only ever been amazing.
Can't complain about Millstream. We've been there to their brewery in Amana.
They have a Skol beer. What's the...
Oh man, we tried it while we were there.
We had it on episode 50. It was a part of our brew hop.
Yep.
Yeah, they're great. Millstream, you guys are awesome.
Go to Millstream, check them out. Amana, there's so much more to do than we were able to do while we were there. We visited the brewery, of course, but
we need to go to Oktoberfest 2025 in Amana. They do it right. They got a parade and a bunch of beer everywhere, and it's awesome.
Let's mark it down on the calendar right now. We're doing it. All right. Well, I think this is a good time to wrap up this episode and to finish the last of this Millstream Shenanigans Irish Red Ale that we've got. Where can people find us if they want to check out our podcast?
Yeah, if you want to interact with us at all, we're on all of the social medias, Twitter or X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, really everywhere. If you Google the Skol Hop, you will find us. We have a website, theskolhop.com. And if you want to directly interact with us too, Twitter works, but you can send us an email at theskolhop@gmail.com. And we'll still do it. If you send us an email, we will send you a sticker if you want. So
yes,
we are easily available if you want to reach out to us.
Yeah. So do that for sure. And let us know what you think about the Vikings free agency situation, what you hope they'll do in the draft, all that good stuff. We're here for it. We like to hear any and all takes and opinions, and who knows, maybe your take will be featured on the show someday.
Maybe, yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Great episode. Great last few days to be a Vikings fan.
For sure.
Best episode yet. Skol.
Hey Vikings fans, Evan here from the Skol Hop, and we just wanted to say thank you again so much for listening to the Skol Hop, and we also wanted to take one more opportunity to let you know that this episode of the Skol Hop has been brought to you by Big Top Ventures. If you're considering taking an all-inclusive trip to either Mexico or Jamaica, reach out to our friends at Big Top Ventures at bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Once again, that's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can get the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts throughout the region. Big Top Ventures. Step right up to your next big adventure. And thanks again for listening to the Skol Hop.